won't stand on the stage, I'm big enough to do it. Thanks for inviting me, Joe. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm not too used to this thing, but however, briefly, I'm here to talk about my own father. He was 87, he died in 1984. Born in 1897, which left him at a very young age taking part in the general strike of 1912. He was always fairly prominent in the labour movement, the socialist party. And he also took part in the lockout, Martin Murphy lockout in 1913. He joined, after the 13 lockout, the Socialist Party, with his father, by the way, it has been mentioned, his father was an Englishman, came over, married a Dublin girl, Walsh. He was a range fitter and chimney sweep, had large contracts around the city because, as he used to say, he was the right colour. And when they discovered that he was a pal of Conley and a member of the Socialist Party of Ireland, he lost it all. And from living in luxury in very swanky parts, as we say in Dublin, out in Dunleary, he ended up in Foley Street, penniless for his activities. That was my father's father. Now, my father then joined the Citizens' Army, and the colony influence was there all the time. When the early Socialist Party was formed, Conley came back from America to help to sort of get things underway, and by and large reasonably successful. But out of that was born the Irish Citizens' Army. But in 1916, when they were paraded at Liberty Hall, is that the name of it? Yeah. On the Sunday before the Easter Monday, they were told, you're no longer the Citizens' Army, you're now the Irish Republican Army, and from that started the Easter week rebellion. My father was posted here beside us in Fairview Park. They distributed various people around the areas to keep intelligence going and to let them know of any unusual movements of police or army. And that's why there was a part of the note here, and that's why you had the battle along here. But in any event, they were brought back. A lot of landmarks in the city, unfortunately, are gone. Metropole Hotel no longer existed. The GPO, they couldn't get the guns to rain on the GPO, and so they set fire to it by bombing it from the roof. And they had to evacuate out of that into Moor Lane. Moor Lane is at the back of the rear of the shops in Moor Street, on the right hand side as you go from Henry Street up to Parnell Street. And it was in the butcher shop that the negotiations actually took place on the surrender. The Army Council didn't regard it as a surrender, they regarded it as a non-conditional stoppage to the insurrection. obviously they were outnumbered hopelessly. And the people like my father who had brought their ammunition and their guns from the GPO up to Moor Lane did not surrender their arms. And that has to be made very clear. There's a difference between surrendering and what they done. They threw their arms on the ground. That's what my own father told me. He told me the whole story that and he had a brother, in fact, also in the movement, and he was based up in the mail office. Some of the age people like myself here might remember the mail office, which was right facing the City Hall. They were planted there to watch the castle. They did not incur any imprisonment because when the surrender, the call-off of the movement started, they lightly walked out of the mail office and went home. People like my father were deported. First of all, they were brought from Moor Lane and left overnight in pouring rain to take the elements in the green patch in front of the Rotunda Hospital. On the following morning, they were marched to the Richmond Barracks, which was in Inchicore. Richmond Barracks, they were supposed, allegedly, court-martialed and sentenced to deportation. They were brought from Richmond Barracks. Afterwards, by the way, Richmond Barracks became Keogh Barracks, and from that then eventually ended up as St. Michael's Estate. They were brought from Richmond Barracks to the North Wall, put on cattle boats and shipped off to Liverpool. From there, some of them to Frongog, some to Knutsford. Knutsford was in the north of England, very north indeed, above Sheffield, and Frongog was in the south of Wales. My father was sent to Knutsford originally, but because he had too many visitors, he had a brother living in Leeds, and so it was convenient. And because he had too many visitors, he was shipped off back to Frongog. Well, that's a sign of the times, but the whole insurrection was woven around a group of people, and I'm sure you've heard many of them, Sheedy Skeffington, McDermott, Pearce, and Connolly. And the whole start-up of the insurrection was organised and directed by the Irish Socialist Party. And from that, you had then, as I said before, the Irish Republican Army came to life out of the Irish Citizens Army, and it had more of an authentic, if you like, ring about it. The terms of the cessation of hostilities, as my father used to call it, was called by the British a non-conditional surrender. They never surrendered. That's an important point. They didn't hand their arms, they threw the arms on the ground. And in that way, if you like to call it a surrender, okay, but they didn't regard themselves as surrendering. These are maybe minor points, but they're important. The result of the night out in the Rotunda resulted in my father being twice in the cruiksling and Rialto, as it was, with TB, and in 1933, at a comparatively young age, he was told he'd never work again. And that was his reward, if you like, and never worked again, but still lived till he was 87 years of age, largely because he had a great mother, or wife, my mother. And she nursed him and but however, the whole point of the insurrection, insofar as my father was concerned, was the inability to distribute fairly the things, the jobs, unless, as I said before, you were the right colour, you didn't get anywhere. And if you got into a job, it was at a very menial end of it, with no pay and starvation. Now, these are historical facts, and I know you're all interested in the history of the rising, and there is no way that this could have happened without people having principles and determination. And when they went into something, they went in wholeheartedly, without promise of any reward whatsoever. And indeed, my father's reward was, as I've said, never to work again at a very young age. Great man, great people, and it's wonderful that in just 2 years' time, the century of 1916 Rising will be celebrated, and I hope you're all here to see it. I'm just on the borderline of 90. I'll be that in a couple of months, so it's unlikely I'll be around. However, you never know, it's hard to kill a battery.